Hey folks, I got my community shirt on, so excuse my how I look. Anyway, most consumers work with real estate brokers because they recognize that technology is no substitute for those particular real estate brokers. Uh, and one of the things that has happened over the since October 31st is that there's been an immense shift. And what I mean an immense shift is there has been a lawsuit that the NAR has lost in which they were fixing commissions for, across the board. But I want to tell you that the NAR does not set commissions. However, they have a book out there that says that while we don't set the commissions, the MLSs should deny anybody who's putting a listing out there that says that the buyer's agency can be set to zero. So let me explain to you what that means. It means as me as a listing agent would list a property for $100,000, and I would sell it at my fee would be 2.5%. So 2.5% would be, what would be normalized around here, I think, for the seller's agent, for just me listing it. But then again, the MLS says, well, you cannot offer zero, no dollars for the buyer side. And here's where the problem comes in. So now the seller has to pay the buyer side. So that's 2.5% that would get paid to them. So that's 2.5% plus 2.5%. Some people say, well, that's no big deal. It's only 5% of $100,000. What is your problem? My problem is that they drill into our head as independent contractors, which is not really independent contracting. They drill into our head saying that the 5% that we charge a seller now, because we have to pay for the buyer's agency, is not collusion. So here's the deal, folks. When I do a listing agent, you are hiring me. You're not hiring my brokerage. You're not hiring the National Association of Realtors. You're not hiring the local association. You're not hiring the MLS. The MLS is a tool that the local association gives you. However, the NAR says, here is the book, and this is what the book should be. And the NAR will say, well, there was no collusion, or there was no corruption, or there was no collusion there. However, they would give the book and say, oh, by the way, Mr. Local Membership Board, if you don't follow this, you will not be able to get any insurance in case anything goes sideways. This is where the NAR lost the case with me, because they're saying that it's fully optional, however, it's required. So what happened? Here is where it's really spaghetti in a bowl, right? So you have one line, and that is the NAR. NAR came out with a book that says this is how your local board should operate. Your local board says, fine, this is how we will operate. The NAR says, oh, by the way, if you don't operate according to the book, even though it's optional, you're going to lose the ability to have any kind of insurance or any other kind of things that the NAR provides. Well, so now, in order for you to be able to list anything on the MLS, you have to be a member of the NAR, the local board, the state board, and you have to be a member of the local MLS. So from the NAR to the local MLS, straight line, you're talking about $1,000 plus or minus. Okay. Now, the MLS says that you have to be a member of the local board. The local board says you have to be a member of the state board. State board says that you have to be a member of the NAR. The NAR says, okay, we don't fix commissions. The state board says, okay, fine, we don't set commissions. The local board says, fine, we don't set commissions. But the MLS says, In order for you to post your listing, you, according to the NAR, have to have a clear commission for the buyer's agency. We just went full circle with the corruption. Now, let's add in brokerage A. So now you have the NAR, you have to be a member of that. State board, you have to be a member of that. Local board, you have to be a member of that. Your brokerage says that now you have to be a member of all three. Oh, and by the way, you have to be a member of the MLS. And because we expect X per transaction, you have to charge a minimal X percent. So, Mr. Seller, that means if I charge you 6%, that means 50% of that goes to the buyer's agent, because that's what the book says has to happen. So 50% of that goes that way. And then we don't know where it goes from there. Now, for the brokerage, because they require X percent, they split that. And it might be 50-50, it might be 70-30, it might be 60-40, it might be 80-20, it might be 20-10, you never know. Or 90-10, you never know. So, with that 20% goes that way, and oh, by the way, the brokerage says, oh, well, we're going to have to charge you insurance on top of that, which is $40. I'm sorry, but the insurance is $300 a year at my local guy. Why do I need $40 per transaction? See where I'm going with that? Which means, guess what happens to commissions? But there's no conspiracy to raise commissions. So now you have all of that. So we split all that off. Then not only does the listing agent have that, but there's also a fee for compliance. There's a fee for this. There's a fee for that. There's a fee for keeping records. There's a fee for all of this other stuff. By the time you get all said and done, even though the NAR does not set commissions, in order for a real estate broker to make a decent living, they have to charge almost 6.5, or maybe, well, let me see if I carry the one. They have to charge anywhere from 5% to 7% on a regular basis in order just to be able to continue providing the service for the rest of the world. Now, you might say, well, that's the cost of doing business. That's all fine and dandy. But where do you think the cost of doing business gets charged? If you have a seller at zero, where do you think the cost of doing business is coming from? The seller. The buyer is bringing the money to the seller, but guess who's paying for all of these? All of that. So the buyer brings it in, gives it to the seller. Seller gives the commission to the agent who listed his property. Then the agent who listed his property gives half of it to the person who just negotiated the deal against them. So the cost of doing business against you is 50% of what you're calling the listing agent for. So it's gotten to the point now where, and I'm going to tell you, steering is illegal, period. I don't care if it is race-based. I don't care if it is nationality-based. I don't care if it's financially based. Does not matter. Steering is illegal. So what we have seen online from brokers right here in our area is that if I'm not going to get paid by the seller, then I'm not going to show their darn house. So what you're saying is, if you're not going to go to the buyer and say that you're going to, you need for them to pay for your services, that you are not going to show them a house, unless the seller is willing to pay your cargo. So, folks, there's a reason why realtors are scum. And every time that I see a index of where people think real estate brokers are, used car salesmen are well above the trustworthiness of a realtor. And I say realtor because that is a National Association of Realtors designation. And I always hated that because I thought it was the possibility that it could be abused. And 2021, 2022, it was abused. Yeah, it's where you see $100,000, $200,000 over the asking price for a house just for a buyer to get into it. Now those buyers are upside down because now we have devaluation. And not only do you have that, but you also have taxes that are being adjusted according to the sales prices of the houses. So those people who say that they had their best interest out for the community and everything else basically took people and threw them under the bus, because now some people who rely on public assistance can't afford living in their house that they might have had for 100 years. So I think it's important to hire people who is trustworthy. And it has become apparent that realtors have violated the very fiduciary duty that they are sworn to protect, even if they are the buyer's agent and they are negotiating against the seller. To me, that's a conflict of interest, because now they are arguing either for or against a higher commission check. So the way it should be is that if the seller comes to me and says, "Hey, Matt, I want you to list my house," I'll say, "Okay, I'll list your house, and here's my fee." Only because I got to put it on the MLS, which I got to pay for, and all this other stuff that I've got to pay for, such as the advertising, the website domain that I have to pay for, all the pictures and whatnot that I got to pay for, measuring the square footage, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And any inspections or and whatnot that may be needed. But most consumers will talk to a real estate professional, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they're ringing my doorbell and asking me if I'm a realtor or if I'm not. They're asking me if I can sell their house, because they recognize that technology is not a good substitute for helping people fix their problems. We help them navigate risk, we help them navigate pitfalls, and we help hopefully get to the point where we can navigate to them to get a result that will satisfy them. It doesn't always happen that way, but things happen in the market. You might have a house that's under contract for $1 million, and then all of a sudden there's one inspection that says, well, it's going to cost $650,000 to fix it. So now all of a sudden your offer went from $1 million to $350,000. Things happen. I know that's super extreme, and some of you are probably going to fall out of your chair going, he's lying and this, that, and the other, but it's an example, right? So sometimes it'll be $10,000 in repair. Sometimes it'll be $20,000 in repair. Sometimes it's a new roof. Sometimes it's new air conditioning, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not going to bore you all night. But those who say that they have led the industry forward has done a lot of damage as far as that's concerned by commission splitting, violating Sherman antitrust, pumping up real estate deals in order to advance their commission checks for more, such as, well, and Mr. Buyer, in order to buy the house, you have to do it for $100,000. You got to submit something $100,000 above asking, and then not have any kind of inspections whatsoever, because the seller is not going to go with any kind of inspection needs or repairs or anything else like that. And that has really severely damaged the industry. And every single one of these are members of the National Association of Realtors. Think about that. The person who put you in a house that's falling apart was a National Association of Realtors member. So we have to take ethics every 2 years. Well, me, not anymore, because I told the NAR to take a flying leap. So they have to take ethics every 2 years. And what they never say is it is unethical for you to negotiate with the listing agent any kind of commission whatsoever, because the people who you have been employed by, your buyers, are the only people you need to be negotiating your commission with. So let me put it like this. Your listing agent is hired by your seller. Your buying agent is hired by your buyer. And the NAR has allowed this crossing of streams since 1980 something. And the result has been less than transparent across the board in everything. So now we have an issue where the NAR is now going, well, we have to have additional ethics because of the ethics that we had before. We got called out on, and now we got to have additional ethics. Folks, if it don't feel right, it's a bad ethic. I hate to say it, but it's a bad ethic. But it's been far from transparent. It's been far from competitive, and it's been far from anything like that. It has not built stronger communities, because somebody can buy a house in a HOA infested community that literally destroys their wealth, and it destroys the value of the entire property, of the properties and whatnot. The guidance for the local MLS brokers marketplaces, they say was optional. However, come to find out, it was not, because they threatened to pull the plug for insurance and whatnot. This is all part of the case that they lost. And it was never comprehensive. It was never fair. It was never equitable, and never transparent, because now all of a sudden the sellers are like, well, wait a minute, you are just charging me 6%. And I assumed that was just going to you. And the contract has it split out where if I charge you 6%, 50% of it goes over here and 50% of it goes over there. But what they don't do is tell you that 50% of whatever it is that comes to me gets trickled down to the point where if my commission check was $1,000, I only got $380 of it. So it came out, the last 5 deals that I've done, I've averaged 38% of all the listing of the price. That's disgusting. If my commission, my standard commission, and all the back braking and all the gas that I have to put into the truck and everything else in order to get to the point where I'm providing a service costs more than me providing the service, it costs more than what I'm going to be able to get from the buyer or the seller, then it's not worth it. It's not worth being part of a brokerage that subscribes to the code of ethics that says, well, in order for you to play in these games, you have to be an unethical human being. And oh, by the way, that's written into our code of ethics. So what has happened? NAR's policy expressly prohibits, I want you to understand this, because I've been part of organizations, brokerages, and I can name 4 of them that have set minimum standard commissions, and they did not like it. When I had $1 million property and I wanted to go to 3% as a seller's agent or a listing agent, they refused. They said, our minimum is blank and you are not allowed to go there. And I fired them because I lost that deal. NAR's policies expressly prohibit MLSs, associations, and brokers from setting or suggesting real estate commissions or fees. Compensation is always negotiable between agents and their clients. However, if you're in the state of North Carolina and you're with one of those big fancy franchise companies, I can tell you those big fancy franchise companies will not allow you to negotiate those commissions. They will come up with every single excuse in the book to get over the objection. And to me, that's a ripoff. It is a ripoff. So you don't like 6%, and you tell your agent you don't like 6%. And you will say, well, we want to negotiate down to 4%. Your broker will sit there and come up with some kind of objection handling script that they have been trained to do in order to get that 6%. And they will sit there and they will say, well, you know what, according to, look at all the value that I bring to you. They bring the same value as I do. I put it in the MLS. I create a website for you. Some of these people just cram it into the MLS and let it sit there for 160 days. I can even auction your property if you want. I do a lot of, I've got 3 deals right now that are all probate. I'm the executor of 2. I'm the administrator of 1. So, there's this idea that you have to be an NAR realtor in order to be a trusted person in the community is not true. Anyway, I'm not going to go on with this because it just really disheartened me whenever the NAR keeps pumping out the same stuff over and over and over again, trying to save face. And it really disheartens me whenever I see somebody getting ripped off for 6% when really, you want your house sold. That's great. But at 6%, they should be able to, buy you a gold ring. But here's where I'm going with this. Listing is an employment contract with the real estate firm in North Carolina, and that firm is going to allow for that broker to make 50, 60, 70, 80%. So if you have 2%, they're going to get 50, 60, 70, 80% of that. That doesn't matter. You hired the person. You didn't hire the firm. But the contracts are written that you hired the firm. The buyer's side, you have to sign an exclusive buyer's agency agreement, which means, Mr. Buyer, if the seller comes up with $0, then, Mr. Buyer, you're on the hook to pay your buyer's agent whatever commission that they have on their sheet, not the seller, and not the seller's agent. So, folks, there's a new video out there that says NAR does not set commissions, and they even say down here that NAR's policies expressly prohibit MLSs, associations, and brokers from setting or suggesting real estate commissions or fees. The brokerages are doing it. The MLS is saying that you can't put in 0 for buyer's agency, even though it says right there, MLSs may not set or suggest real estate commissions or fees. That's their code of ethics. It's not mine. Folks, this is Matt Price. I am your auctioneer and your real estate broker. If you ever want to sell your house and you want to do it very transparently, give me a call, 919-614-6288, and go Scouts. Have a great weekend.